the untold stories of crime in maximum security prisons. Every story you've heard about maximum security prisons is a lie, because the truth never makes out alive. Tonight, we're going inside the walls where the most dangerous criminals in the world are locked away. But not even steel bars, reinforced doors, and 24-hour surveillance can stop what thrives in the dark. These aren't stories about escape attempts. These aren't tales about riots you've seen on the news. These are the stories that were never meant to be told, because they expose the crimes happening after the criminals were already behind bars. Welcome to the secrets buried inside maximum security prisons. The murders that left no bodies, the gangs that control entire cell blocks, the guards who cross a line, and the inmates who became legends in the worst way possible. And it all begins with a man who once said, "In here, the real sentence starts after the judge leaves the room." Before we begin, hit that like, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear is so shocking. Most prisons would rather this documentary never existed. SFX. Prison gates slowly opening with loud mechanical clanks. Today, we're traveling into the heart of several maximum security facilities, from abandoned solitary wings to the underground tunnels where contraband worth millions moved like water. These aren't myths. These are real stories collected from retired correctional officers, former inmates with nothing left to lose, leaked documents, and forgotten case files. Names have been changed. Events have not. Let's begin with a place inmates rarely talk about, because the ones who didn't live long enough to finish their sentence. The Night Wing, deep inside Rystone Maximum Security Prison, was a corridor officially known as Cell Block D4. But every inmate and every guard called it something else. The Night Wing. It got the name because the lights, for reasons no electrician ever understood, never stayed on longer than a few minutes. They flickered constantly, humming, buzzing, then dying, plunging the entire hallway into darkness. But that wasn't the scary part. What terrified everyone was what happened during those blackouts. Back in 1998, D4 was home to some of the most violent offenders in the state. These weren't pickpockets or scammers. These were men with life sentences, men who had nothing left to lose. The warden believed the darkness made them easier to control. He was wrong, because in the dark, D4 became a kingdom ruled by a man known only as Silence. The legend of Silence. No mugshots, no interviews, no recorded voice. He earned the name because no one ever heard him speak, not once in 14 years. But Silence didn't need words. He controlled D4 through actions. His first act? On his second night in the block, the lights went out for 6 minutes. When they came back, cell 17 was empty. Not empty as in someone escaped. Empty as in the inmate was gone. Completely. No body. No blood. No signs of a struggle. Just a perfectly made bed. The guards searched every inch, every vent, every pipe. Nothing. And the inmates, not a single one made eye contact. Not a single one said a word. That night, Silence became more than an inmate. He became a myth. But as you'll see throughout this documentary, myths in maximum security prisons tend to hide the darkest truths. The guard who broke the rules. Former guard. If D4 had a problem, we didn't report it. You don't poke the lion when the cage is already shaking. But one guard did. A rookie named Ethan Clark. Young, by the book, believed rules mattered. He filed a report asking why inmates kept disappearing from D4 without explanation. 3 days later, Ethan Clark's keys were found on the floor of the Night Wing. Ethan was not. To this day, the official record lists him as resigned and fled due to stress. But everyone knows the truth. Silence didn't like questions. The hidden passage. For years, D4 was a black hole of Rystone. Inmates went in, rumors came out. But in 2011, a maintenance team made a discovery that changed everything. Behind the metal panel in D4's shower room was a hole. Not a hole dug recently. A hole carved decades earlier. A hidden passage, dust-covered, silent, stale air thick with decay. The tunnel led to a sealed-off basement level that wasn't on any blueprint. Inside, investigators found makeshift beds, candles melted down to stumps, shivs made from old metal trays, and carvings on the wall, thousands of them, names, dates, and one sentence repeated almost everywhere. We live in the dark. But the most disturbing part? A list of names crossed out with deep, angry slashes. Every name matched a missing inmate. At the very bottom of the wall, Clark, scratched in shaky, desperate letters. And this was only one block in one prison. Because what happens next takes us across the country, into the gang-run wings, the bribery networks, the black market economies, the secret killings, and the inmates who became untouchable. The night wing was only the beginning. The king of solitary, the man who controlled an entire prison from a 6x9 cell. If the night wing was a kingdom ruled in shadows, then the next story takes us to a different kind of throne. A throne carved out of pure isolation. His name was Devin Lockjaw Marquez, and for 12 straight years, he lived inside a small gray box no bigger than a walk-in closet. But that wasn't what made him terrifying. What made him terrifying was that he ran the entire prison from in there. Solitary confinement, also known as a hole, is where inmates are sent to be broken. 23 hours a day alone, 1 hour to walk in a fence box with a concrete floor. No visitors, no phones, no sunlight. But Lockjaw, he treated the hole like a command center. His reach stretched across cell blocks, across races, across gangs, across guards, and even across other prisons. This is how a man with no freedom became the most powerful figure behind the walls. The man who couldn't be killed. Before he became a legend, Lockjaw was just another street enforcer, known for one thing. His jaw had been broken multiple times in fights. So many times that surgeons replaced part of it with reinforced plates. Rumor said he could take a full punch from a grown man and not flinch. But power? That started in his first week in prison. 7 inmates jumped him during breakfast, members of a rival gang. He didn't scream, didn't call for help. He dislocated his own shoulder to break free, then knocked out 2 attackers with his elbows alone. The fight ended with Lockjaw standing on top of the table, blood pouring from his mouth, staring at the guards like he was daring them to intervene. From that day forward, inmates whispered, "If Lockjaw wants you gone, you disappear." But the prison administration thought they had the solution. They threw him into solitary. They thought isolation would break him. But all they did was eliminate every distraction and give him time to build an empire. The Solitary Connection Network. Most inmates in solitary lose their minds within weeks. Lockjaw thrived. The secret? He used the one communication tool every prison overlooks. Toilets. There's an old method in prisons called plumbing talk. Inmates drain water from the toilets and speak through the pipes like telephones. Muffled, slow, but effective. Lockjaw mastered it. Soon he learned the layout of the entire plumbing network. He knew which pipes connected to which blocks, which floors, which wings. Each pipe became a channel. Each channel became a messenger. Lockjaw wasn't isolated. He was connected to everyone. Orders went down the pipes. Information came back up. And when the guards caught on, it didn't matter, because by then, Lockjaw had upgraded. The guard who sold the prison. His name was Officer Ryan Hale. 28 years old. Drowning in debt. Child on the way. Bills stacking up. He made one mistake. He accepted a carton of cigarettes as a bribe to pass a message to another inmate. 1 carton. $10 worth of tobacco. That was all Lockjaw needed. Within a month, Hale was smuggling in burner phones. Within 6 months, he was moving in entire packages of contraband. Within a year, Officer Hale was Lockjaw's personal delivery system. And what did he get in return? Protection, not from inmates, from the warden. Because Lockjaw had dirt on everyone. Where the money went, where the bodies were buried. What guards were sleeping with which inmates. Who was pocketing overtime money. He collected secrets like currency, and he spent them like a king. The day the prison bowed down, The most shocking part came in 2014. Two rival gangs were on the brink of all-out war, a war that would have killed dozens of inmates and at least 3 guards. Administration prepared riot squads. SWAT was placed on standby. The National Guard was notified. And then it just stopped. In one night, every gang leader quietly ordered a ceasefire. Why? Because Lockjaw sent a message through the pipes. War ends now, or the next funeral is yours. Nobody questioned him. Nobody tested him. The next morning, the entire prison yard was silent. Guards had no idea why. The warden had no control over it. But everyone inside knew. Lockjaw had spoken. From a 6x9 cell, he prevented a massacre and proved he owned the prison more than the warden ever would. The Great Transfer. When the state realized one inmate had more power than the entire administration, they panicked. They arranged a sudden midnight transfer to another maximum security facility. No notice, no warnings, no contact. 4 guards, 2 vans, full restraints. But Lockjaw didn't resist. Instead, he smiled, a slow, unsettling grin that one guard later described as a man who already knew he'd win. And he did. The prison that suffered after he left. After Lockjaw was removed from the system, his old prison fell apart within months. Violence skyrocketed. Gangs started fighting again. Guards quit. Riots erupted. Contraband flooded the yard. It was only then that the administration realized something horrifying. Lockjaw never controlled the prison through fear. He controlled it because he was the only one powerful enough to keep the monsters from fighting each other. He was the devil who kept worse devils in check. Without him, the walls trembled. But Lockjaw wasn't the only individual who shaped the prison from the inside, because the next story takes us into the darkest trade hidden behind bars. Blood, bones, and the underground medical black market. A place where inmates didn't just fear losing their lives. They feared losing their organs. The black market doctors of Cell Block H. If the night wing was a place of shadows, and Lockjaw's solitary cell was a throne of power, then Cell Block H was something else entirely. Something darker. Something that still terrifies former inmates to this day. Because deep inside that wing was a secret operation, run by men who were supposed to heal, not harm. A place known by one whisper. The clinic. But this was no clinic. And the doctors inside were no doctors. They were traffickers. But not of drugs. Not of weapons. They trafficked human organs. The block no one volunteered to work in. Cell Block H at Grayson Maximum Security Prison was originally designed as a medical wing, but funding cuts, staff shortages, and rising violence turned it into something else. A holding place for sick inmates, mentally unstable inmates, and men awaiting surgery. It was understaffed, neglected, overshadowed by the chaos in other parts of the prison. But that's exactly why the clinic thrived there. Because in a place no one cared about, anything could happen. And it did. The doctor who never should have been a doctor. His name was Dr. Alan Rourke. On paper, a veteran prison physician with 22 years of experience. In reality, a disgraced surgeon banned from practicing in 3 states for performing illegal procedures. But prisons are desperate places. Desperate institutions make desperate hires. They brought him in quietly. No background check. No oversight. And behind those locked medical doors, Rourke built an empire of flesh. The first victim. It began with inmate Terrence Boyd, convicted of armed robbery. He complained of stomach pain for weeks. Rourke diagnosed him with appendicitis and scheduled an emergency operation. There were no other doctors on duty. Only Nurse Fallon, who later claimed she didn't see anything. Boyd went into the operating room. He never came out. The official report. Complications from anesthesia. But rumors spread fast in prison. Inmates said Boyd had been too strong, too healthy, too alert for that to be true. Then one inmate swore he heard Rourke during the surgery say, "Bag it, ship it, move fast before morning round." And that was the moment Cell Block H got a new nickname, the Harvest Wing. The illegal market, organ trafficking behind bars, isn't a myth. It's rare, difficult, dangerous. But when it happens, it generates massive money. Rourke didn't work alone. He had help. 2 guards, 1 nurse, and 1 broker outside the prison who sold organs on the international black market. Prices were staggering. A healthy kidney, $70,000. A liver segment, $40,000. Corneas, $10,000 each. Bone marrow, $8,000. And Rourke? He made more in 1 month than he had made in 5 years as a legitimate surgeon. But a business like this doesn't stay hidden for long, especially when they began targeting inmates who weren't sick, just valuable. The inmate who survived the table. His name was Marcus Till, a former gang enforcer serving 18 years. He wasn't sick. He wasn't scheduled for treatment. But one night, guards dragged him into the medical wing without explanation. Till woke up strapped to an operating table, mouth gagged, limbs restrained, lights blinding him from above. Rourke stood over him, scalpel in hand. Till realized the horror. He wasn't there to be treated. He was there to be harvested. But Till had something working in his favor. He had dislocated shoulders multiple times from fights. He knew exactly how to pop one out, with a scream trapped behind a gag. He tore his shoulder loose, slipped out of the restraint, and swung his metal cuff so hard it struck a surgical tray. The crash alerted a guard outside, and for the first time, Rourke panicked. Till escaped the operating room with blood dripping down his side, sprinting through the hallway with one arm hanging limp. He made it back to his cell, collapsed, but he lived. Till's testimony later exposed everything. But the prison administration had a problem. If the truth came out, it would destroy them. So they made a decision that shocked the entire inmate population. They silenced Marcus Till, not by killing him, but by transferring him to a facility with a violent rival gang, knowing what would happen next. 3 days after he arrived, Marcus Till was found stabbed 47 times in the yard. Case closed. Truth buried. Or so they thought. The nurse who broke the code. Her name was Georgia Fallon. The nurse who assisted Rourke. She wasn't evil. She was scared. Guards threatened her. Rourke intimidated her. The administration pressured her. But after Till's murder, she couldn't take it anymore. She leaked documents, photos, recordings, and she told one reporter a sentence that still haunts investigators. They weren't killing inmates. They were recycling them. Her testimony finally sparked an investigation. But when officers raided cell block H, Rourke was gone, vanished, a dead guard, open cell doors, blood on the floor, and a single message carved into the wall with a scalpel. Do not try to find me. He never resurfaced. Not in the U.S., not internationally. To this day, Dr. Alan Rourke remains one of America's most disturbing fugitives. The clinic was shut down. Cell block H was sealed. But the secrets of that place still echo through prison corridors. And now, we move from a wing ruled by illegal doctors to a story even more chilling. Because this one isn't about criminals hurting criminals. This next chapter is about a facility where every inmate went insane. Some say it was built wrong. Some say it was cursed. Some say the government tested something they never admitted. Whatever the truth is, the result was the same. Nobody who stayed inside cell block E for more than 30 days remained normal. The block that made inmates lose their minds. Some prisons are violent. Some are corrupt. Some are ruled by gangs. But this next place, this was something different. Because what happened inside cell block E wasn't caused by guards, or inmates, or gangs, or violence. It was caused by the building itself. A place so psychologically damaging that a federal review once called it the most dangerous architectural design in North American corrections history. A place that was quietly shut down, sealed, and erased from official maps. Today, former inmates call it something else. The Block of Echoes. The architect who warned them. Cell Block was built in the early 90s by an architect named Franklin Aldridge. He had designed prisons across the country. But E-Block was his masterpiece, or so he thought. He envisioned a layout that maximized efficiency. Narrow triangular cells. tier hallways, concrete angles designed to amplify guard visibility, vent systems that connected every room, and a unique acoustic structure. But after construction finished, Aldridge toured the finished wing and immediately panicked. He demanded the block be redesigned, tore up his blueprints, wrote reports warning. This wing should not be used for human confinement, but the state had already spent $72 million. His warnings were ignored. 6 months later, inmates started losing their minds. The sound no one could escape. It began subtly. Inmates reported hearing faint whispers in their cells. Not talking, not words, more like a soft, repeating echo, like someone speaking from a distant tunnel. At first, guards thought it was plumbing, but the sound never stopped. It came at night, during meals, during lockdowns, during showers. And then one inmate, a murderer named Isaac Boone, screamed one evening, "Stop listening to me." But no one was listening to him. He was listening to himself, because that whispering sound was the echo of his own voice bouncing through the triangular cell design, a sound so warped, so delayed, so distorted that he didn't recognize it as his. Imagine hearing your own voice speaking back to you from the walls, over and over, all day, all night. The architect had warned that the acoustics would cause intense psychological stress. He didn't know it would cause something far worse. The first breakdown, the first documented mental collapse, happened 11 weeks after the block opened. Inmate Paul Hendricks, sentenced for burglary, told guards the walls were breathing. He said the whispers were forming sentences, said the echoes were telling him, "You don't belong here. Fix it. End it." Hendricks clawed at his ears until he tore his eardrums. When guards found him, he was smiling, covered in blood, whispering, "It's quiet now." He spent the rest of his life in a psychiatric unit. He was the first, not the last. The guards who wouldn't enter. Within months, guards refused to perform night rounds inside E-Block. One guard said, "You could hear something behind you even when nothing was there. Footsteps that weren't yours. Breathing that wasn't real." Another said, "It felt like someone was standing in the corner of every cell, even empty ones." The administration installed more cameras, more lights, more staff. It didn't help, because the problem wasn't the inmates. It wasn't the guards. It was a sound, a constant, unending, misaligned echo chamber created by flawed architecture, a place where every cry for help, every angry shout, every sigh of frustration came back seconds later like a stranger mocking you. Human minds were not built for that. The incident in cell E42. The worst event happened in 1997. Cell E42 housed an inmate named Jamal Rivers, a former gang hitman known for being silent, cold, and unbreakable. He'd survived stabbings, riots, and solitary confinement. But cell E42 broke him in 19 days. On day 19, he began screaming that someone else was inside his cell, a shadow version of himself, one that spoke in his voice, one that repeated everything he muttered, but slower, darker, twisted. Guards checked the cameras. No one was inside with him. But at 3:14 a.m., Rivers pressed his face to the cell window, blood covering his mouth, whispering, "I'm not the real one." The next morning, he was found unresponsive, not dead, not unconscious, comatose. Doctors found no drugs, no head injury, no stroke. His brain had simply shut down. He never woke again. The shutdown. After 14 confirmed psychological collapses, the state launched a full investigation. Aldridge, the architect, told them, "I warned you. The angles amplify and distort frequencies in a way the human brain can't process." An independent audio analysis team measured Block E's acoustics. Their conclusion was chilling. Sustained exposure to these echoed frequencies can cause sensory misinterpretation, derealization, hallucinations, and mental fracture. In simple terms, the building made people insane. Cell Block E was shut down in the middle of the night. Inmates were transferred. Lights turned off, doors welded shut. To this day, that wing remains sealed. Even guards refuse to walk past the hallway entrance. They say that sometimes, late at night, you can still hear someone whisper, "Is anyone there?" Cell block E broke minds. But our next chapter? It broke bones. Because while some prisons crush people psychologically, others turn them into warriors. The next story reveals a brutal truth. In some maximum security prisons, the strongest fighters are built, not born. And one prison perfected that process better than anywhere else. Behind every locked door, behind every concrete wall, there are stories the world was never meant to hear. Stories of men who rule from the shadows, doctors who harvested what they were sworn to protect, and blocks so cursed by design that they broke the minds of everyone trapped inside. These prisons don't just hold criminals. They hold secrets. Secrets buried under decades of silence, corruption, and fear. And every time we shine a light into these forgotten corners, we uncover truths darker than the crimes that built them. Truths that demand to be seen. Truths that refuse to stay hidden. Because the world behind bars is not just about punishment. It's about power, control, survival, monsters created by a system, and monsters created by the walls themselves. And the reality is simple. The most dangerous part of a maximum security prison isn't the inmates, it's everything else. So before we close the door on today's journey into the darkest corners of the prison world, if you felt something, if you learned something, if at any moment you caught yourself leaning in, then do one thing, like the video. Share it with someone who thinks they've seen it all, and subscribe, because we're not done telling the stories they tried to erase. There are still prisons we haven't explored, still secrets buried in concrete, still voices echoing from the other side of the bars. And together, we'll keep shining that light, one story at a time.